be there in contact.
Welcome everybody. How you doing? Thanks for being here. Appreciate you coming. Welcome to our speaker series. Thanks for coming. Tonight we have Nick Hagan. Is that right? He's going to tell you all about beavers and what the damn thing they do. One more announcement. Next weekend. This weekend, apologies. This weekend, Ted is going to have our weed management field day. So if you want to learn about noxious weeds and how to address managing them up here on the mountain, please come by. It starts at 10 o'clock over at the pavilion by the mountain meeting place. So if you want to learn about different herbicides and different weeds and how to identify them and how to address them and how to keep them off their property, and that'd be great. And Ted will be here. And we'll take care of that. And for now, I'm going to turn it over to Nick. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Dan. That's Millie. She's my mascot. Thanks for having me. Very happy to be here. And yeah, we're going to talk about some beavers. Let's see. Are we
ready for the lights?
Yeah, is that how we're gonna do it? Okay. Is that everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So yeah, like I said, my name's Nick Hagan. I have a beaver business, I guess you would say, called Songdog Outdoor Services right here, based out of Fort Collins, Colorado. I do pretty much all things beaver, but my focus is what's called Beaver Coexistence and Beaver Relocation. And we can talk about some of that as we go here. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. That's fine. So I have here, we'll probably discuss. So when I do these presentations, I never know what people know about beavers or how, what their knowledge base is. And so I don't want to spend a bunch of time on things that you guys already know. And this is, but I don't want to leave anybody behind if we're not filled in. So if I'm going too fast or if I skipped over something and people ask questions, just raise your hand and let me know. This one, I kind of decided to go more towards the coexistence because I heard that you guys have beavers through Glacier Meadow. And so some of this may be pertinent to you if you have beavers. I'm just going to see if this works.
It doesn't.
It vibrated. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. Oh, am I doing that or are you doing that?
You're doing
Oh, I'm doing that? Oh.
I fixed you.
Oh, okay. All right. So, well, I just messed that up. Well, I'm going on right now. Uh-oh. Well, there you go. That's
Let me
it.
take it back.
Oh, thank you, guys. Okay, Nelly.
So the big one. Yeah. Oh. What happened?
I don't know. I don't know.
Hang on. Mario will rescue you.
You just tell her next.
Okay. Yeah, I just pushed the big one, I think.
Yeah, we have issues. Yep, hang on. Technical difficulties. We're gonna fix it. We're gonna try to fix it anyway. Here, let's show from beginning.
To be fair, I did tell the ecology team that I was not very tech savvy, so they knew.
We're getting there. From beginning. Any luck?
Should I do the thing? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll check. Okay, great. Thank you. So yeah, as I was saying, I don't want to have this be a review for people. We're just gonna kind of move ahead, but if you have any questions or if you feel like you're being left behind, for you. So yeah, that being said, I usually talk a little bit about history and biology, ecology, ecological services, beaver draining badly, blah, blah, blah. Beaver futurism, I don't know what that is, but talk about it if you want. So yeah, I just did the thing. Oh, did you do that? Okay. Okay, all right. Cool. Yeah, so who is this guy? What are we doing here? So as I said, my name's Nick and I have a beaver business in Fort Collins. But I didn't start out as the beaver guy necessarily. I grew up in Montrose, Colorado, which is on the western slope there. But the rest of my family, most of my family is from Montana. And so after I graduated high school, moved back to Montana. I lived there when I was a kid. And it was there that I first started getting into beaver stuff and stream restoration. I was telling Terry earlier, in Montana, you are not allowed to relocate anything. And so I used to get hired to trap beavers and muskrats and whatnot out of irrigation ditches for farms and ranches. And if you trap an animal in Montana, you either have to kill it or you have to let it go. And so that's maybe going to change. I'm actually a part of a exploratory committee that's trying to change the law. There's a bunch of complicated ag laws about moving stuff and not being able to move stuff. And so we're trying to get an exemption so we can do a exploratory kind of project to see if we can convince the state and the Fish and Wildlife Commission to allow us to do that. But anyway, that's how I got my start. I was a part of the Trappers Association in Montana, and that led me to doing stream restoration, which led me to the Beaver Institute. And honestly, I did that. Did I? Or did you do that? I think you're propping me up, but that's okay. Has anybody heard of the Beaver Institute? Okay, so the Beaver Institute is a real thing, and it's based in Massachusetts. It was started by a guy named Mike Callahan, who in the 90s, mid 90s, he started playing around with non-lethal beaver management strategies. So in 1996, in both Massachusetts and Colorado, both states passed ballot initiatives that banned most trapping tools of beavers, muskrats, and other water animals. So in Colorado, there still is a trapping season, but as a licensed fur/recreational trapper, you can only use a live trap, like a box trap or a cage trap or whatever. Same in Massachusetts. Typically, when people are doing beaver control work, i.e. killing beavers, they'll use what are called conibears or body gripping traps. They're like big mouse traps, or they'll use the classic foothold. So both of those methods were banned in Colorado and Massachusetts in 96. In Colorado, it didn't make much of a difference as far as the landscape goes, but Massachusetts, it did, because Massachusetts has a lot more water. It's a lot more densely populated, and that population is up against water. And so after they passed that initiative, they saw an explosion in beaver conflicts because they were no longer allowed to use these other lethal tools. They had to come up with something. And so that's when Mike started toying around with different concepts, which we'll talk about later, and eventually formed his own business called Beaver Solutions, and then ultimately formed the Beaver Institute in order to share what he's learned and the techniques he developed with other people. And so in 2022, I applied and was accepted to the Beaver Core training program, which is their training program. And it's an online course that you do it's like a correspondence course. So you're in contact with Mike and the staff at BI in Massachusetts, but there's a scholastic online portion that you do, which is more traditional books and tests and whatnot. And then the second phase is what's called your mentored project phase. And that's where you actually go out, you identify projects and you bring them to Mike, and he kind of walks you through like, all right, what is the situation? What are we going to do to mitigate it? Then you go out and do it, and then you do a review, and there's like a whole thing. So they have done a good job of keeping it small and accessible, while still keeping it a quality thing. And yeah. So anyway, I came to that because I was doing LTPBR work. Is anybody familiar with that term?
No.
So it's just stands for low tech process based restoration, which is a fancy way of saying like fake beaver dams. So we do a lot of what's called BDAs, or beaver dam analogs, which are fake beaver dams essentially. The whole idea with LTPBR is you are letting the system do the work. So instead of stream restoration being approached with bulldozers and $1 million contracts and concrete, we're approaching it with sticks and muds and hand tools. So it ties in with beaver stuff because it's often called beaver mimicry. So there are streams that historically, pretty much every stream in North America had beavers in it. But as we know, there was the fur trade and that wiped them out. We're still feeling those effects today. But there are now, because of the way that we've developed, especially out west, there are systems in which beaver probably either won't naturally recolonize, or they are just not going to be able to because of the social tolerance. And so in those areas, if you still want the ecological benefits of the beaver, but you don't want the beaver actually there, you can do this LTPBR work. And it really is just like, we go in and we build fake beaver dams with sticks and mud, and we try to back some water up. Yeah. So anyway, I was on a project in Montana for the Sage Grouse Initiative, and that's what led me to the Beaver Core training program. Yeah, sometime in there, I went to Front Range Community College in Fort Collins. Yeah, and then as part of the Beaver Working Group, blah, 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 all this stuff. This Fisheries Advisory Board, that's the one that we're trying to get the regulation changed on relocation, blah, 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 blah. We were I was a part of the Technical Advisory Board. Are you guys familiar with the Beaver Plan, like the new Beaver Plan? So there's like some of us maybe. So in February, CPW, I guess, adopted officially the Colorado Beaver Conservation and Management Strategy, which is just the Beaver Plan. Basically, it is a guiding document for the state and for all the state agencies and all of us on down, on how they would like people to approach beaver conflict, basically, because that's what it is. And so in the summer of last year, I was invited to be part of the Technical Advisory Board. So there were people like me who work with beavers, and they gathered everybody up and they said, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Put a plan. Does anybody here work for CBW? Okay, so the plan was like, they get points for doing it. But really, Colorado is kind of behind the times as far as beavers go. Most other Western states already either had a beaver plan or they didn't need one because they already had aggressive beaver programs happening, like Utah is one of the lead states for relocation. They also did a lot of the development for this LTPBR technique. Washington has a very successful beaver relocation program, and so on and so forth. So anyway, yeah, I was on that. And you can see the crown jewel of my beaver career is Mountain Living lecture series. Yeah. So, but all of that is not to build myself up. So this is from a trail cam from last October. You see this beaver, right? So this fencing here is supposed to keep the beaver out.
It's working.
Yeah. So I all of that is just to say, even with all my involvement with beaver stuff and all this and that, this rodent is still eating me at my own game. So anyway, that's me. Yeah. So we all know beavers can get into trouble, right? Beavers like to chew down trees. There used to be a dock here for like a private little fishing thing. Beavers chew down trees, they plug up culverts, they flood out your driveway. Just in their normal course of being a beaver, they can be a problem. And so again, traditionally, beaver management meant killing beavers, mostly trapping them. But especially when Colorado passed the ballot initiative to restrict trapping, and with beavers kind of having a moment, and people realizing the potential for things like wildfire mitigation, for water storage, for water clarity, all the water stuff, wildlife habitat, all these benefits that beavers can bring through their activities, has made people kind of take a different look at, well, how are we managing beavers, and how can we keep more beavers on the landscape without having these conflicts? And that's what the CPW plan was trying to address. And it's great for someone like me who just started a beaver business that all this stuff is happening. So yeah, but it's still relatively unknown. Like, has anybody here heard of beaver coexistence as like a term? Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk a lot about that. Yeah. Does anybody have any questions about just like beavers in general? Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so beavers behaving badly, like this is more, are they aggressive towards humans?
Oh.
Like I saw you holding them, and like they're a little fluffy, like it doesn't seem like they're gonna hurt you.
Right. No, they're not like little grizzly bears. I think there has been one documented beaver. I don't know I think it was a death, but it was because somebody was like handling a beaver when they should have been handling a beaver, and it like bit them.
Oh.
But I might be making that up. I don't know.
It seems
I think,
tight.
but yeah, like beaver, like being attacked by a beaver is like not a concern that anybody has. Yeah, so yeah,
Not as meaner.
raccoons are far, far meaner. So yeah, so when I say beavers behaving badly, I'm just being cute. And it's just referring to the things that they do in the course of being beavers. So beavers build dams, right? We know that. So beavers will build dams for a few different reasons, but mostly they want to have their entrance to their lodge. I don't know if you guys can see this, but they want to have the entrance to their lodge underwater. And so they live on land. They're considered semi-aquatic, but they live on land. They breathe air, but they want. Oh,
Sorry.
thank you.
Morning. Yeah.
In order to deter predators, they want to have the entrance to their lodge underwater. And so they'll build these dams to back up the water so that they have enough depth in order to do that. They'll also do it in order to access food. So beavers are very good in the water, but on land, they're pretty clumsy and they are not really built for defense. I mean, they have the teeth, but the teeth are for chewing wood, not for defense. And so if they get caught out on land, by like this guy or a coyote or whatever it is, they're in trouble. And so by building these ponds, they can get closer to vegetation while still being in the water or not being far from the water. Yeah, beavers they'll typically maintain more than one lodge. These lodges can huge. I mean, like maybe not as big as this room, but I'm not big in space, but they've excavated beaver lodges that have multiple chambers with different levels, I guess you would say, with like kitchens and birthing areas and sleeping areas. I mean, it's really incredible.
More than one family live in a lodge?
No, it's usually just one family. Yeah. As docile, I guess, as they are, beavers are very territorial. And so while they don't fight amongst themselves, they will fight with other beavers, like outside beavers. And so once a beaver kind of establishes their home, like they build a pond, they have the lodge, whatnot, they defend that vigorously. And it makes sense because they have worked hard to create their home, create their food source, and they're just not good on land. So once they have this set up, I mean, that's a lot of work, right? So you don't want to just let that go or share it with somebody else. So typically in a beaver colony, you'll find 3 generations. You'll have a breeding pair. Beavers typically will mate for life. And so once they take a mate and they build their home, start having kids, they'll have usually 2 to 4 kids on average. They will stay with mom and dad for 2 years. Kids are born in the spring. And so usually you'll have the breeding pair, last year's kids, and then this year's kids. And by that between the second spring and the third spring, the 2 to 3 year olds usually disperse. That's about when they're sexually mature. And that's about when mom and dad are like, we got more coming. So, they are rodents, so they're kicking them out pretty good. So yeah. And typically, you would you read old trapper journals and whatnot from like the early 1800s, and all these drainages with streams, anywhere with water, like you had beaver. I mean, that's why it was such a Shangri-La of fur, because you claim a drainage and there's going to be beavers all the way up there. And you start thinking about, all right, if there's a little dam like that that's holding back water, I mean, that's not that significant. But if you multiply that times, 20 stream miles of Elkhorn Creek up here, or you multiply that by the whole watershed of the Pooter, and you just start going out and you start to realize beavers, pre-colonial inhabitants here, they were storing the vast majority of the water. Like we have these huge levee systems on the Mississippi River, and all the big rivers, you have all this levee stuff and flood control and whatnot. They didn't have to do that, right? Natives don't have oral traditions about their levees and how they had to do all this stuff, right? Because, and it's not because there wasn't the same amount of water, right? Because water, the amount of water we have is the same, but it was being managed differently, and it was because of beavers. This book here, Eager, I don't know if anybody's familiar with this. This guy actually lives in Colorado, but he's not from Colorado. So, but I think he lives in Salida. Anyway, this was a New York Times bestseller, as was this Beaverland. This came out in 2015. I think this came out in like 2018. You would think like two Beaver books, like coming out that close to get like, I mean, you don't have to do both, right? Like they get that different. They're they're very, very different. They're both very good. I recommend both. But in Eager, the guy, Ben Goldfarb, he talks to, I think they're scientists in the Midwest, and they actually did the calculation of, well, how much water were beavers storing? Like what was that? And I can't remember the number, but it was astronomical. I mean, it's like
Massive amount.
massive, like trillions of cubic gallons or what, I don't know. But enough so flooding wasn't an issue, and enough so that the landscape that we know now, especially out west, is far, far, far from what it actually was. Because if you think about the fur trade happening out west, starting in about the turn of the 1800s, right? Goes for about 20, 25 years. By 1830, 1840 for sure. It's pretty much over. And by then they've pretty much wiped out all of the beaver. And so, 1840. So then we got the Civil War and homesteading, and then, like maybe 1870s, the last of the natives are put onto reservations, and then we really start settling the West, right? So that's only 50, 60 years out from this mass harvest of beavers out of our watershed, coupled with these really freak wet years that happened like in the 1880s. And what you have is you have these settlers that came west. They saw all these streams that were now devoid of beavers. And so they thought, well, this is what this is supposed to be, and this is how it's supposed to function. And then they had some really wet years in the 1880s. And so they thought, wow, the land is great, the water's great, this is gonna last forever, right? And we all know that's not true now. But we built all of our infrastructure. Our whole premise out west, especially again, is based on this idea of how we thought the land was when we first got here. And I think now, because of everything that's happened, that's really starting to, the chickens are coming home to roost, right? And so that's also why beavers are kind of having this moment, right? Like that's why Eager and Beaverland were written. That's why there's a movie too called The Beaver Believers. Anybody ever heard that? You can find it on YouTube. It was done by a woman I know named Sarah Konigsberg. She is at Utah State right now. And the Beaver Institute started, right? And when I started at the Beaver Institute in 2022, it was still a pretty like ragtag operation. I mean, not as far as content or anything like that, but they were a small nonprofit out of a small town in Massachusetts. In 2024, we hosted BeaverCon at CU Boulder, which is the premier beaver event. This was the third one in Boulder. They do it every other year. This year it's going to be in Minneapolis if anybody's interested. But the 2 years prior, it was held in Baltimore, and there was like 7,500 people at both of those in 2022 and 2020 respectively. And in 2024, when they came out west and they had it at Boulder, they capped the ticket sales at $350, and they ended up overselling it at like $5. And then the fire marshal was like, "You can't." And so, anyway, to me that just illustrates like how this whole thing has accelerated, and the popularity of beavers. I mean, you guys are having me here, right? Popularity of beavers, and the idea that this is kind of a cheap, easy fix. Like, well, it's not a fix, but there's a lot of talk about beavers as restoration tools, as fights against climate change, against wildfire, against drought, all these things, right? And so going back to the CPW called the Beaver Plan, that was like CPW was reading the writing on the wall, and they wanted to. Well, I think they were getting a lot of pressure because they didn't have like a party line on it. But they wanted to get it down paper, and they wanted to bring our state up to speed and kind of make it official for people like me to be able to do the kind of work that I do. Because in a lot of ways, I was doing it prior to the plan, but it was all kind of in a gray area where you'd call CPW and be like, "Can I do that?" And be like, "Man, they'd be like, yeah, I don't know, maybe you can do it. I don't know." You know, and like I got a relocation permit last year, and it was just like an email from Sarah that was like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." So but now that we have the plan, it's a little bit more solidified. Anyway, when I go off on like tangents like that, you guys just rein me back in. I'll just keep going, because originally you just asked how many beavers lived in a lot. So anyway, rein me in. Yeah, go ahead.
So 2 more questions.
Sure, of course.
So what do beavers feed on?
Sure.
And then what's their lifespan?
Sure, very good question. So beavers do not eat fish. I don't know how that got started, but there's a common misconception that beavers eat fish. They do not eat fish. They are strictly vegetarians. They prefer different foods at different times, but they always like aspen, willow, poplar, alder, cottonwoods, all the deciduous trees that live along riparian areas. But I think they're considered generalists. Beavers have been documented to eat over 100 species of trees, grasses, sedges, rushes, all sorts of aquatic stuff. So they really can subsist on a lot of different things. And I personally have seen a lot of beavers in some pretty thin habitat that seem to be doing okay. And so there's another misconception that, oh, beavers have to have big stands of willows, or they have to have this or that. Like we all like to have TVs and fridges, but we don't have to have them. So yeah, beavers, and because beavers are so territorial, they'll get pushed out onto the margins of good habitat, right? And so they're kind of forced to make a living where maybe it's not so great. But you had another question, which was how long they live. So realistically, in the wild, if a beaver lives for 8 or 10 years, that is an old beaver. They can live in captivity up to 15, I think, is probably about the max. There were some people pre-permitting everything that kept beavers, and they had journals about them, and they lived quite a long time. But typically in the wild, yeah, I think the common idea is like 10 is probably about the max. And you think beavers, they stay with mom and dad for 2 years at least, and then they go off. They might not find a mate that first year, so it might be 4 before they're paired up and breeding. And so they make it to 10. That's 6 long years as the happy couple. So that's like pretty good.
That's funny. Yes.
So yeah. Do you have another?
Nick, we were at Fish Lake, Utah.
Yeah.
And you can see panda, the big giant stand of aspens.
Oh yeah, right.
And along the lake there was a beaver lodge, and I noticed that some of the big trees they were chewed on, but
And then,
it was like they were abandoned. It's like just an overzealous beaver that
yeah,
trying to knock us down, and then you abandon them. There's something else going on.
yeah. So nobody knows. Like I've asked myself things like that many times, and yeah, we don't really know. So there are some theories about beavers being able to either taste or smell or somehow know if there's like some sort of disease or fungal thing in a tree, like that's gonna be bad for it. But they don't know. They don't know. Like I have this and I kept this because, right, so beavers will chew down trees. They'll chew down trees for a number of reasons to use in their dam, right? Because they'll use the wood to build their dam. They will eat they don't actually eat the wood, they eat the inner part of the bark here. So they'll chew it up, it'll look like that. So they use it for food, use it for building. A lot of times they'll, like with those big aspens, like they want to eat the like tender shoots at the top, so they'll drop it to eat that, which may seem wasteful to us, but they tend to use the rest of the stuff. But anyway, like this, right? I'm like, why did they do this? Like they chewed this end, and then they chewed it. It's like whatever this was, like this they didn't want. They wanted this part, and they wanted it, right? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure they had their reasons, but hell if I could figure it out. But yeah, they don't really
Send them
know.
to a beaver psychologist.
I know, right?
For their study.
Right? Yeah, so we don't really know. I always try to figure out, like, well, why did the beaver chew on this tree or this willow? Because you'll see, like, I'm sure that you guys saw, like, they chewed this aspen down, but they walked past, like, I don't know how many other aspen to get to this one here. And, aspen, everybody's a snowflake, but it's like, they're not that different. So it's like, why they go here and not there? We don't really know. Yeah.
Question, do beavers hibernate?
They do not hibernate, but they do kind of chill out. They don't quite enter torpor, which is like a kind of hibernation. But they do, their metabolism slows down. They'll shut down. Especially in areas like this where it freezes. Again, beavers will build their lodge with the entrance underwater, and then that'll freeze over. And so they'll essentially be trapped in their lodge. And so what they'll do is through the summer, they'll build food caches. So they'll chew branches off, and then they'll take them to a deep part of the pond, and they'll just start stacking them. And eventually they'll get waterlogged and they'll sink to the bottom. So then when it freezes over, as long as it doesn't freeze all the way through, that'll still be accessible, right? So the lodge will still have their access, and then they can go get that food. They'll also eat their lodge, like they'll intentionally, well, we think they intentionally, use not eaten sticks and greener limbs to build the inner part of their lodge, so that if push comes to shove, they can eat that in the winter. But they do slow down. They're not as active. Again, some of them get trapped, and so they don't hibernate, but they're not. Like I don't get a lot of beaver conflict calls in the winter because they're not out doing stuff. It's like now, this is like when they're doing stuff. Yeah. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so we'll kind of move on here, but if something comes up, just let me know. Yeah, so beavers behave badly, but they don't bite unless you make them bite. Yeah, I just tried to do the thing. Did anybody here have beavers at their property? Because there are beavers in Glacier, Meadow. Nobody does?
On hikes, but not at our property.
Because what is it? Does Elkhorn come through Glacier View? What water comes through Glacier View? Oh, there's no water?
Sore subject.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, yeah. So if you got beaver problems, that's a great beaver.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess I shouldn't have made this all about beaver coexistence if you guys don't have any beavers.
No, it's
Yeah,
good.
that was good. There's a lot of ranchers in Livermore that have beavers. It's not far,
Yeah,
you know. technically coexist, but maybe not in the HOA.
Sure, yeah, no, well, it's too late now, this is what you guys are getting. Yeah, well, and we were talking, earlier about, Crystal Lakes and Red Feather, right? So, there's a lot of beavers up there, like the North Fork. North Fork's dirty with beavers. So, yeah, so anyway, if you know someone who has a beaver problem and they are fed up with that and they ready to do something about them, have them call me. But you could tell them that there are other options besides just killing that beaver. And I should say I'm not against killing beavers per se. You know, I did start as a trapper. I think that if we're going to have infrastructure and human development and life and all the modern things, that's a compromise in and of itself. And if that's what we want, then there are certain compromises that we're going to make with the natural world, right? I'm not saying that that's right or wrong. It's just what it is. Like, we tend to build our roads along the river bottoms. Like, we are probably not going to rip up our entire interstate system for even water quality, right? I worked a job in Montana where, you know, out on the prairies and badlands of eastern Montana, it's all farm and ranch still, and these huge ranches and not very many neighbors, and they don't have very good cell service out there. And so everybody has a landline, and beaver got into a stream and flooded out this call box, whatever, infrastructure for the landlines, and took out the communication system for, you know, however many people up this ranch road. And, you know, that beaver had to go because nobody's going to say, oh, we're going to deny people 911 service or anything else for this beaver. So, yeah, so I'm not anti-trapping. I'm not, we got to save every beaver. You know, I have to think practically. I deal with a lot of different people with different viewpoints on different things. And so, yeah, but that being said, I think that there are a lot of situations where killing beavers is easy, but killing beavers doesn't really solve the problem. Because if you have beavers, it's probably because you have good beaver habitat. And if you have good beaver habitat, you'll probably get more beavers. And so you can trap them out, but again, they're rodents. Kicking them out every year. There's a new class of graduating beavers that are off to find their own territory. And so sooner or later, you're going to end up with more beavers. Massachusetts did a study after they banned all the trapping, or they restricted all the trapping things. This small town did a study about what is more cost effective, because they were hiring trappers. They had trappers on contract to just kill beavers that were flooding out roads because they were plugging culverts and this and that. And they found that over 3 years, it was more cost effective to do beaver coexistence, non-lethal beaver management, than it was to hire trappers. So within that 3 years, it was cheaper to hire the trapper, but after that, it was cheaper to do coexistence. And so there was another study too that I'm blanking on, but there is, you know, it's not just people saying, oh yeah, this, you know, that's, I don't know if you call it science, but there's some hard numbers for promoting this kind of thing. And in Colorado, again, per the beaver plan, it is now like the state official party line that if you have a beaver conflict, like a beaver is flooding out your driveway or they're chewing up your trees or whatever it is, that your first line of defense needs to be some sort of coexistence or even relocation before you can go kill that beaver. Now, that's not, the beaver plan, as I call it, is not a law. It is a guiding document that CBW approved. And so it's not really even regulations. It's just kind of, it's more aspirational than anything, right? It's like, we, the people, believe that beavers should be like this. And so while there isn't any enforcement behind it, it's the guiding thing. And so as a landowner in Colorado, if you have a beaver, you can kill it without a permit. You don't have to call anybody. You don't have to report it. You don't have to do anything really. You can just kill that beaver and nobody has to be none the wiser. And that hasn't changed. But if you are not a landowner, or if you have a big beaver problem where you're going to need to remove more than, well, I guess you could kill as many beavers as you want on your own property. Anyway, there is such a thing as a damage permit, right? And so, like, if I got hired, well, no, because they can be an agent. The plan didn't change anything. You can just kill beavers, but they want you to not kill beavers. We'll just go with that. Anyway, if you have more questions about that, we can talk about it later, but I'm about to go on a tangent and we don't have that much time. So what's beaver coexistence? They're also known as beaver deceivers. I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. Beaver coexistence is just anything that is not killing a beaver, basically any sort of non-lethal management technique. And I call them the big three because there are three big beaver problems: flooding, plugging, like culvert plugging, and then felling, right? Like tree felling. And so if you hear someone talk about beaver deceivers, they're probably talking about one of these three things. And I should note too that beaver deceivers is actually a trademark term by Skip Lyle, who is Mike Callahan started Beaver Institute, but he actually started as a student under Skip Lyle. Mike has been far more successful than Skip, and I don't know Skip, and I don't know if he's like hurt by that, but he's definitely like trademarking things like beaver deceiver. So anyway, beaver deceiver is trademark, but it's still very common vernacular. So the first one is pond leveler or a flow device. That's meant to control, regulate water. You can see here, this is one I did up near Fraser, Colorado, last summer. Basically, it's just a leak in a beaver dam. And so the way it works is, let's say you've got a beaver pond and you can tolerate 3 feet of water, but if it gets to 4 feet, it's going to start flooding your basement, and that's not going to work. So we can come in and we can put in a pond leveler. Wherever I put the outlet end of my pipe is going to be where that water level is, right? Because water will seek its own level. So if I have a bucket and I drill a hole right at 3 inches, I can pour as much water in that bucket as I want, but eventually it's just going to come down to 3 inches, right? So it's the same idea here. This is like a 12 to 15 inch culvert pipe, right? I run it back to the deepest part of the pond, and then I build a big cage around it like that. This diagram was produced a while ago. That's got a pathetically small 6x6, or that's the mesh size. It doesn't have dimensions. When Beaver Institute started, they said, build about like a 5 to 6 foot intake cage is what we call them here. I don't know if you guys can see that very well. It's basically to keep the beavers out, right? Because they'll plug your inlet end. And so you've got to keep them out of that. When the Beaver Institute first started, they said, make your cages 6 feet, 5 feet, whatever. Now they're saying for a 12-inch pipe, you're probably going to want to make it 15 feet at least. And if you're going with a 15-inch pipe, you want to go as big as you can possibly do it. And the reason is because beavers are triggered by the sound and the feel of flowing water. And they're also triggered by the suction of water, right? Because when they're patrolling their dams looking for leaks, they feel that suction that tells them, hey, my dam's got a leak. We need to patch that up. So same thing with these intake pipes. When I put a pipe in here and I start draining water, it'll be so much that I'll get a whirlpool at the top of the water inside my cage there. And so that just tells you how much force is being generated there. And so if you don't keep beavers away from that, they'll feel it and they'll start trying to dam it up. These are not 100% effective, but they're pretty damn effective. They're effective enough that if you call me to put one of these in on your property, I will guarantee it. So if it doesn't work, I will come back again and again until it works. That's worked so far. That policy didn't change, and so far it's been okay. Any questions about that? So that's our first one. Second one,
The cost of one of those,
the cost.
yeah,
Um,
that one you built there.
Sure. See, I'm doing it again. See, I feel like, oh no, there we go. Okay, all right, never mind. This one, the pond leveler, it's pretty cheap if you don't factor in like my labor costs. All it is it's a culvert pipe. It's usually either 20-foot section or two. And I use cattle panels and I use T-posts and I use 9-gauge wire. So like that one, materials, all in. The pipe is your most expensive thing. That pipe's hard to get actually. But the pipe's gonna run you $150 to $200. Cattle panels are $30 a piece. I might use 6. T-posts are $5. You know, so you're looking at $500 maybe just in materials. But then I add my big professional fee in there, so. But,
And $550.
right, exactly, right. Well, that's about what people want to pay. But yeah, like as far as these are not super expensive, and that's one of the reasons why they've gained popularity. Because you could think about, especially like a municipality or like a golf course or something like that that's constantly dealing with beavers. If you got to pay a trapper to like be on call, like do all this stuff, that's going to add up. The beauty of this is you put it in and it's done, right? It doesn't matter, like, because beavers can come and they can build this dam as high as they want now, and it's always just going to come back to this level. And so you could have as many beavers as that pond wants to hold, you know, and that still works. So yeah.
So it's 40 feet away, right?
That one is not 40 feet because that was the deepest part, but typically you want to get at least.
So was that discovered by trial and error?
Yeah.
Like if you make it even closer, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. So yeah, what they found is that if it's too close, that beavers will figure out, well, they think they figure out the correlation between this device and the leak in my dam. And so the further away you can get that intake, I mean, you're putting a cage around it to try to keep them from feeling that in the first place. But the further away you can put it, they seem to, there'll be a disconnect there, right? And funny enough, they don't usually plug up my outlet end here. Like I don't put a big cage on my outlet end. And you would think that they would, right? Because, you know, oh, they're triggered by the sound of rushing water. You know, I mean, this is a big 12-inch pipe, you know, and, but they don't. And I think the reason is because usually they're patrolling on the inside of the dam and there isn't a leak there. The leak is in the pipe. Like, it's not like I'll put that in and then this one's kind of pretty, but like I'll usually build this back up so the pipe isn't really exposed. And so if I do it right, there isn't a leak there, right? It's not leaking under the pipe. It's all going through the pipe. And so they just don't really tend to do that. Now the times when I do have to put a cage around it is when there's a series of dams and the dam that I'm installing the pond leveler on is an active pond, as in a lot of times beavers will build a succession of ponds and they'll go back and forth between them. And so if they're doing that, they're obviously gonna come across the outlet end and they're probably gonna wanna plug it up. In this pond, this was like the lodge pond, and so the lodge is back here, and so they built that one up to maintain their lodge, so they're not going down below here as much. And so I didn't worry about it, but, yeah, that's a good question. But this one here, it's only 20 feet, and that was because you want to put it in the deepest part of the pond. And that's where that was, and so that trumps your length. Like if it's deeper, closer, then go with closer. But if all things being equal, then go with the low pipe. Okay, we're gonna burn through this. Culvert protection fence, this is for culverts and for drains and anything else. This is one I built out at Elliott State Wildlife Area for CPW 2 years ago, I think. And you know, if you have a culvert that beavers are plugging up, like you can't just like put a grate over it, right? Because they'll just, you know, it doesn't work, but you'd be surprised at how many people try to do that. But it doesn't work. It actually helps them. And so this culvert protection fence was designed. And the way that this works is, again, beavers are triggered by the sound and feel of moving water. And so they come to a culvert here that's just begging to be plugged up. You know, beaver doesn't start a dam like in the middle of a stream, right? They're like gonna start at one end, like on the bank. They need an anchor. And so they're gonna start here to try to build this way, right? But they're on the outside of the fence and they start damming and they start working out this way. And instead of the getting closer to the other end of the pipe, and instead of the feel of that water getting faster and more pronounced, the flow is getting less because they're moving away from it and they're going further away from where they're trying to go. And it just kind of messes with their little beaver minds and it just stop. So like I see a lot of fences that I put in and there'll be damming like to about here. And then they're like, nah, something's off. Yeah, and it works. You do get beavers that'll go all the way around. If that happens, you can do what's called a fence and pipe technique. And basically you just treat this like a beaver dam. You stick your pipe through here and you basically build a pond leveler through your fence. And that seems to work pretty well. Again, none of these are like 100%, but they do pretty well. I guarantee these two. So, although one last year I probably shouldn't hear. But yeah, any questions? Yeah.
What is the fence made of?
Those are cattle panels. Actually, those ones are goat panels. I was taught to use cattle panel. Are you guys all familiar with what a cattle panel is? So you can get them down at like Murdoch's or Tractor Supply or any of those places. A lot of people use them for garden trellises, like they'll bend them over like in a big arc and let vine plants grow on them. But cattle panel, they come in 16-foot sections. They're like 16 by 50 inches tall, so like about 4 feet. And the reason that I was taught to use them is because it's a good compromise between mesh size. So like if you go too small mesh, then you're going to have to maintain that fence because it's going to get debris build up on it faster. And if you go too big, the beavers are going to get through it, right? So a cattle panel, they're smaller at the bottom, but most of the mesh is 6 by 8, and that's just small enough that an adult beaver probably isn't going to squirm in there. Like a small kit could get in there, but the kits aren't the ones that are like doing the major damming activity. And so we're not so worried about that. The other thing is they're cheaper by a lot. Like a cattle panel, they did go up, but they were $25 a piece. Now they're about 30. A goat panel is pushing 80 and a horse panel is like 100. And so you start thinking about, we need 5, 6 of these and $50 versus $80 versus $100, you know. So for a landowner, it's like a lot more. attractive to use a cattle panel. Fun fact, I had a beaver breach a cattle panel fence in system that I worked in last year. And I don't have a picture on it here, but not only was this adult beaver pushing its way through the mesh, it was also bringing sticks with it. So it could dam up the culvert. So anyway, that was a first for me. And it was a shot heard around the world in the beaver world when I told all my friends that do this work, hey, guess what? And this happened to me. But I still use cattle panels because they're cheaper and because that beaver was a special beaver. And I know that beaver was a special beaver because I actually trapped it and I moved it onto this property. And she was probably the smartest beaver I ever had to deal with. Like they had APHIS, like Wildlife Services, the government trappers in there for 2 weeks trying to trap that beaver, and then they just gave up. And they called me on the last weekend of the permit as like a Hail Mary. And I did trap it, but that beaver was smart. And it was a sheep, it was the mama. Anyway, all right, I know that we're past time here, so last one, tree protection. It's to protect trees, and we usually just wrap them, or there's a sand paint method. People will take like paint and grit and they'll mix it together. And if you're interested in doing it, you can go to the Beaver Institute website and they've got a ratio on there. But you just paint it. It works better on smooth bark like aspens and stuff like that. You know, to tell you the truth, like I've only done it once and I only did it because these people wanted to do it. I don't think it seems that great because beavers will chew down trees, and what's like a little thin layer of paint with some grit on it, like it doesn't seem like that's that great. But anyway, Beaver Institute says it works, so I added here. This here, you probably can't see this, but this is chicken wire that got wrapped around that tree. And yeah, so again, it's like beaver chewed through chicken wire. Like I don't see how a little bit of sandpaper is gonna deter it, right? So, but anyway, if you want to wrap a tree, what Beaver Institute recommends is using the welded wire garden wrap that comes in the rolls. It's usually about yay tall. And the only other technique with it is you don't want to put it like right up against the tree. Like that will work, but they'll still kind of girdle in between the things. You want to put it out from it, and you want to kind of like we've got rebar stakes in there. You want to keep it away. You don't want them to even try to bite on it. The other thing is if you get any snow, or if you have a tendency to have snow to drift, that snow, you know, it'll drift up to here, and then that beaver just walks up that little snow. I've seen it happen. So yeah, but otherwise there's no secret to it. It's just wrapping a tree. You'd be surprised at how many calls that I get where people are losing trees, and you know, they pay me to wrap them. I mean, I'll do it. You know, it's not a big deal. If you guys have to go, I won't be offended. Ask not what beaver. Beaver believers. Have you guys heard the term beaver believers? That's like what everybody's being called. Like all the beaver people are the beaver believers. And why now? We kind of talked about it's like all the ecological things, climate change and whatnot. Yeah.
What departments sponsored this CU Boulder?
Oh, none of them. It was the BeaverCon is put on by the Beaver Institute. It was just hosted by CU. So I don't think there was actually any actual like college buy-in on it. Like I think we just kind of rented a space there. I mean, there were certainly students and faculty and whatnot from, but yeah, CU wasn't like a part of it, I don't think. It's done by Beaver Institute every other year. This is the reason that they only do it every other year is because this State of the Beaver Conference was the first Beaver Conference that started in like 2010, and that happens out in Oregon, which is the Beaver State. It's not State of the Beaver. And that happens every other year. And so out of respect for the OG Beaver gathering, BeaverCon decided to do their gathering on the off year of State of the Beaver. I've been to both of them. They're both great. If you're a Beaver nerd like me, if you're not, you probably won't have that much fun. But any this sounds silly, but anybody who's anybody in the beaver world is going to be there. And it's not a ton of people, but you know, they will be there, and it's a good time. And you know, like there's a lot of jokes about beavers, and you think that would get old, right? But it gets better because these people are like PhDs. They're like smart people, so their jokes are funny. But anyway, yeah, that's that. And then here's some pictures, some work I did here in Colorado. So again, this was a fence and pipe install. Like there's a culvert here, we put a fence there. This was actually done preemptively. Like we were going to release beavers here, and we were basically armoring this site because the rancher was like, all right, I can't have them plug this culvert, I can't have them do this and that. So this was all preemptive. But you can see, so that's me bobbing up there in the water with the intake end, and then those poor guys are having to work with me putting that in there. Yeah, tree wrapping, Millie. And this is from some relocations that actually the state wants to say translocation, so a relocation technically is within the same watershed, I think. And so translocation is more universal as far as movement goes. So the official thing is translocation, but it's the same thing generally. Last year, I think I moved 7 beavers total, from 3 properties onto 2 different properties. These are all conflict beavers. Like some of them came out of a ditch in Denver. You know, they're all beavers that were gonna die, basically. Like if I don't, or if somebody doesn't relocate them, they're gonna get trapped out. And so I got a permit last year and was able to move these ones. This was a family. Well, those are the kids. That's mom. And she had 3 kids and moved them out to a ranch east of Colorado Springs. And I was just out there this weekend, check on them, and they're still there. That's a big thing with relocation is they don't always stay where you put them. And so it's a big controversial thing. But fortunately, all the ones I put have stayed. More beaver kits, like beaver kits. It's funny because like I do a lot of beaver work, but I don't like see a lot of beavers, right? Like I probably see more dead beavers than live beavers because of when I was trapping. But you know, like beavers, they're wild animals and they don't just come out and say hi. So I do all this work, but I don't actually see them. And when I do relocations, I have to quarantine them for 3 days. And that's 3 days after you catch the last one, right? So like I caught the kits first because the kits are kind of dumb. And I mean, they're smart, but they're kind of dumb. So I caught the kids first, and so I had them in quarantine, and they're just like little kids. It's funny because I mean when you first get them and then you put them in the cage, like they're scared, but they're like pretty soon they're just like, all right, whatever, and they're just like running around like that one's playing in the water, you know, like, and then you put their brothers and sisters in there, and then they're just like running all over the place, and you know, and then I get mom, and like mom's like, this is not good, right? You know, but the kids are just like, and they're just like running around and playing. It was really funny. But you know, like they have such strong family bonds. And you could really see that like once you had them, like when I got mom, like there was like no question, like it was like anybody could see that this was a family and they knew it. So it was very, this is right before they got released. So CBW recommended that I put them in a doghouse. So in a doghouse. They also, they didn't want, see, the quarantine thing is required, but it's not real because I didn't do any, like I was like, do you want me to like take samples? Do you want me to like test things? They're like, no, just hold them for 3 days. Okay, so, but I have friends in Utah that are part of the program there, I have a friend here at the research center for USDA at, in Fort Collins there, who's working specifically on like, what are we doing when we're quarantining beavers? And we don't know. Like, the main concerns are beavers will carry Kittredge fungus, which if put into high elevation waters could be disastrous for like boreal toads and stuff like that. And the other one is whirling disease, because the whirling disease will live in the water moisture of their fur. But last time I checked, like every watershed in Colorado was whirling disease positive. So it's kind of like, if you both have the STD, like it's not that big a deal. So, but you know, they're the state, and so they said I had to do it. So they told me, well, you need to dry them out. Like, you can't be giving them water for like at least a 10, probably 12-hour period to dry them out, because we want to dry out the whirling disease in their fur. And I was like, it's August and it's like 100 degrees by 10 o'clock. And if I keep them out of what, like, they're gonna die, right? Like, this is already the most stressful thing that's ever gonna happen to these beavers. And, you know, I can't deny them the water, like, they're aquatic animals. And besides that, I don't have like a dry-o-meter, right? Like, I don't know when dry is dry enough, right? This is like some of the densest fur in the world. So like, there's probably going to be a little bit of moisture in that fur, even like after however many hours. So to risk their life over like the theoretical idea that we may introduce something that is probably already there to begin with, like, I said no. And they didn't take my permit. So, and as far as I know, there's no whirling disease in place. That's them being released. You can see like that one's pretty big. I didn't realize that until later. I was looking at it, I was like, I think that beaver gained weight. Because that was a little kid. I mean, the kids were there this big. And that's the mom. Anyway, yeah, so that's it. That's the beaver that was breaching my fence. She was going right through here. And she was bringing sticks with her like that. Now I was like, she's gonna get stuck in there, right? But she did. She's the smartest beaver I ever dealt with. Anyway, thank you guys for having me. I'm sorry for running over. Special thanks to all these people for having me. It's great. You guys are great. And yeah, if you have questions, I won't be offended if you have to go. Really, I
We'll
won't.
clap
So-
quiet for the puppy.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
she's like the total fun police about. I know, it's okay. Thank you guys. I really appreciate you being here and for
I
having
have
me.
a question.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
Oh, I have stickers and business cards and whatever. No, you're good.
Like, you've got a beaver, it's taking down all the trees around there. So the trees are all down. So then what happens? Do the beavers stay there
Oh,
or do they move?
I see. Right. Yeah, they eventually they will move. So the cycle is like they'll build their ponds, right? They'll set up their whole thing, and then they'll basically eat themselves out of house and home, or they'll eat whatever, like however far they're willing to go from their pond. And then once that's kind of exhausted, they will move on. And so ecologically, like in bigger terms, like what happens is the riparian vegetation, even in like coniferous forests, tends to be deciduous. And so they'll eat that and they'll build the pond and then they'll move. And what you get is this really fertile meadow because it's devoid of trees and it's got all these nutrients and minerals and whatnot that's been deposited there for however many years that pond was active. And then when beavers move on, there's this clearing in the forest that's super fertile and all this new growth comes in where it wouldn't necessarily either, anyway, right?
Without them being there.
Exactly,
And
right.
they usually go upstream, downstream.
Yeah, so I was just having this argument because I thought sometimes I get ideas in my head and I think they're true, and then I find out it's just something I made up. But I wanted to say that they like to go upstream, but then I was like, I don't know why I think that. Like, so I don't know if that's just something I made up or if that's actually something I read. But I think eventually, well, I think if they're not forced by other beavers' territories or by food or something like that, I think they'll go to whatever the best habitat is. So whether that's, just down the way, or if that's wherever, that's where they'll go. But again, like the way it's supposed to be is you'll have these systems and there will be a beaver colony for every available section of stream. I mean, it will be continuous beaver pond for the whole length. And so at that point, those beavers just go wherever they can. Now, if a beaver loses their mate, I think they'll take it. Some people say that they won't take another one. I think that's a little too Hollywood, but like I think, well, I know that they will because like I paired beavers, like single beavers, like that mom, I like paired with a single beaver. And Washington State in their beaver relocation program, they have like they call it like the love shack or whatever. It's like that when they get single beavers, they like have two cages that are next to each other but separate, so they can put a male and a female and see if they like sparks fly. And then if they do, then they can like relocate them out of the pair, because a pair is more likely to stay where you put them than a single beaver who's like a single dude. So right. So yeah, to answer your question, I think they'll just go, if they're not forced by other elements, I think they'll go to the best available habitat.
They'll go by water, not by land.
That's the closest. They will go by land.
They will.
Yeah, if they have to, beavers will go overland, which is extremely dangerous. But yeah, I've talked to farmers who have been like, I was in the middle of my field and looked down, there's a beaver there. And I've worked in drainages where, like I worked this drainage in Montana that was all spring fed, and there was a creek for maybe half a mile or so, and then it kind of petered out into the ag fields, and beavers were in there. And the closest like main stem, like waterway, was at least 5 miles as the crow flies, at least. And so there's no other way that beaver got there. And yeah, actually, I just the other day, if you guys want to see, I saw a beaver on the highway near Boulder in the middle of the night that was walking along the side of the road up Boulder Canyon there. And that I'm sure was a dispersing beaver, because this is dispersal time. And if you know Boulder Canyon, like that water is fast and narrow. It's like not good beaver habitat. So it wasn't like I live right here and I'm just like up on the highway just going around. Like he was like going. So
I'll say thank Nick for sorry. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, man.
Damn good job.
Thank you.
Sorry. Next month, Tuesday, the 14th, we have a speaker on, it's hard to, you better read the thing on the door here because it's agrivoltaics. Thank you. And read about it because it's very interesting. But thank you, Nick.
Yeah, no, thank
Really
you.
great.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. Thank you all for coming.
If you, snack, there's banana bread, some chicken waffle, like that.
I have an answer.